Welcome back to the next episode of Arrakis Central. Please remember to like and subscribe if you enjoy this content. In this episode, we will be going over the famous and honorable Duke Leto Atreides. Duke Leto Atreides was born in the year 10,140 after the establishment of the Guild. He was born on the planet Caladan and would go on to serve as its 20th Duke. His latest portrayal was shown in the 2021 film Dune Part 1 by the actor Oscar Isaac. Duke Leto is the father of Paul Atreides, and he was known as to be a compassionate and just Duke. Duke Leto was born to the parents Duke Paulus Atreides and Lady Helena. He claimed Atreides lineage and Corino heritage from his mother. The tragedy of his parents was that his father was a very noble man, but would end up being killed by a drugged bull, a Seleucus bull, during a bullfight. He would actually find out that his mother was involved with his father's death in the bullfight and would exile his mother. Once that situation was over and he became the Duke of Caladan, he would go into a relationship with future Paul's mother, Lady Jessica, the Bene Gesserit acolyte, who was assigned to House Atreides. And Lady Jessica had secret orders from the Bene Gesserit order, of course, to bear a daughter with the Duke. But of course, she would fall in love with the Duke and wanted to give him a son instead, which would be Paul. This would cause a greater rift between House Atreides and Harkonnen, and the Bene Gesserit was not happy with this because they wanted to join the two houses, and this was going to further their future of making the Kwisatz Haderach the perfect super being. Duke Leto would go on to be very popular among the Landsraad, and the Emperor would become very jealous of this. This would start the rift even worse, and eventually with the plan with Baron Harkonnen, with the aid of the Emperor secretly, to overthrow House Atreides by giving them the fiefdom of Arrakis. Near the beginning of the first Dune book, we see that the Baron and Piter de Brise, his mentat, is covering his plan, and then during that discussion, along with Fade sitting in the corner, he lets them know that we're going to get Sardaukar. Undercover, Sardaukar dresses Harkonnens to help in the overthrow of Atreides on Arrakis. This was talked about a bit more in the book as opposed to in the latest films. And some other areas we're going to get into in the book as compared to the films was some of the subplots and some of the reasonings of why Duke Leto chose to take over the fiefdom of Arrakis. In the book Dune, it's very apparent that Duke Leto was very smart and understood that there would be a betrayal of some sort, or that the taking over of Arrakis actually was a trap. He did know that there was an option that he could take his family and go to the far reaches of the known universe, to some planet far out in the reaches, to basically become exiled and just run from the whole situation. But he knew that he would never be safe totally in that aspect. Well, he went with the option of actually taking the fiefdom of Arrakis so that he could make a pact with the Fremen and take full power and possibly even take over the Imperium. Although to my recollection, I don't think it says he had those aspirations to take over as the next emperor, but he wanted to have that leverage of controlling Arrakis, so he could have that leverage and safety, that safety net for his family in the future. But little did he know that there was going to be a traitor so close to the family, as we've seen in the last film and in the books, that Dr. Yui, the trusted doctor with Suk Imperial training, would end up being the traitor. But one of the most interesting plot points from the book, which is not shown in the film, the latest film, was that there was an entire plot point in which that Thufir of Hawat thought that Lady Jessica was the insider or the traitor working for the Harkonnens. This was due to a piece of intel retrieved from I believe it was a caught spy, in which the letter referenced that it was possibly Lady Jessica was the spy working for the Harkonnens. Duke Leto let Paul in on this plan to let everyone else think Lady Jessica, Paul's mother, that she was actually the spy. This was a piece of counter-espionage that the Duke Leto wanted to be put out there, so the Harkonnens, if they do get that intel that Lady Jessica is the spy, that they can actually focus on finding the real spy. He would go on to tell Paul if anything happened to him, that he would have to let his mother know that he trusted her the entire time, and that was all part of the plan. I really feel that this is one of the biggest differences, or a big difference, in the films versus the movies. Because it is a large plot point later on in the books, in which I've talked about in other videos, that Gurney Halleck would actually try to assassinate Lady Jessica later on in the book once they were reunited, because all that time he would actually believe as well that she was the spy. But I've talked about that a little bit in a different video. But really, House Atreides, in many ways, or the Duke, was ahead of the Baron Harkonnen, minus that one little fact that the Dr. Yueh, would be the betrayer, because they did not actually find that out until, of course, it was too late. It is kind of sad that Duke Leto was such a just, honorable man and Duke, and that he was very smart and strategic, but there was just so many cards stacked against him that no matter what he was going to do, it was pretty much going to end up with him being killed. So once the betrayal begins, Dr. Yueh will poison or tranquilize the Duke, and then replace his tooth with a poison tooth in order to get close to the Baron once he's captured, and to hopefully poison and kill the Baron. At this point, you realize that Dr. Yueh knew he needed a backup plan in case the Baron betrays him, although it never specifically states that I can recall that he knew the Baron was going to betray him 100%. But I believe he probably knew that. But what would end up happening is that the Duke, or Duke Leto, will release the poison, bite down on the tooth, and then he would poison everyone in the room, but the Baron would escape out of the doors just in time to close the doors behind him, and he would survive the poisoning. This was a little different in the movie, the latest movie, where he just kind of floats to the ceiling. But in the book, he actually escapes out the doors and then sacrifices everybody else in the room. Pretty much the same thing. But he doesn't actually get too much poison on him, and he kind of celebrates and boasts in the book that he survived and everything. It's pretty funny. Unfortunately, Duke Leto would die in this manner, but Dr. Dewey set up a backup plan to help Lady Jessica and Paul escape captivity from the Harkonnens, as they were going to be killed and left in the desert to die. But it would also end up leading Duncan Idaho into rescuing them as well out in the desert later on. And that's pretty much shown in the film, in the 2121 film. That's pretty accurate, pretty close. And they actually even have the deaf guy in that scene when they're on the ornithopter, which I thought was a nice touch from the book, as they did actually use a deaf Harkonnen minion because the voice couldn't be used against him. That was actually on purpose in the book. And I thought that was a nice touch in the 2021 film. But Duke Leto's legacy would live on with Paul. In fact, he would name his kids after his father from years to come after he becomes the Emperor. It's kind of a spoiler warning, but at this point, I think people know what's going to happen in the end of Dune Part 2. I think that the movie will have slight changes compared to the book, as did the original movie as well, because you can't fit it all in the two movies, honestly. This is why I think Dune would have been a good miniseries, which it was, but in my personal opinion, the sci-fi miniseries was a little too cheesy for my liking. Some of the costumes and set designs are kind of outdated. But in closing, Duke Leto was a crucial part of the Dune book, and he was much more involved. And there was many more scenes in the book of him strategizing and planning behind the scenes, and that he was well aware of that there was a plot against him, a very specific plot, not just kind of an overall awareness like in the movie, but he really knew more specifics of what was going to happen. He just didn't know the exact person that was the traitor. But if you do like this content, please remember to like and subscribe. I know I don't get all the information into every video, but I'm trying to keep these as short as possible. And I will see you next time. Thank you.